Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to build the Quintuple Pentakis Dodecahedron. Now, I'm assuming most of you are familiar with my tutorial video for the Quintuple Icosahedron, seeing as it's the most popular video on my channel by a pretty wide margin. So what I'm doing here is essentially the same concept. I'm layering a polyhedron frame concentrically. The difference, of course, being that instead of using an icosahedron frame, I'm using the frame of a pentakis dodecahedron, which is rather more complex. As such, this build presents a lot of challenges that weren't really present in the quintuple icosahedron build, and those will become apparent as we get into building this. So let's get started. All right, so what I have here on the table are all the subunits needed to build the first layer of this construction. Those of you who have followed my tutorial for how to build a single layer pentakis dodecahedron frame will note that this arrangement of subunits looks a little different from what I showed in that video. And that's because the first layer is so small that you have to use a slightly different method to build it. So let me show you how this works. First of all, you're going to need 20 of these subunits here. They're made out of 2 stacked rings of 18 magnets each, which are just pinched in the middle like that, and that's how you get these. Pretty simple. You also need 30 of these pieces here, which are just 2 squares stacked on top of each other. I find the easiest way to make them is to just start with a ring of 8 and pinch, twist, and fold like that. And let me just check polarity. You want to make sure that when you're adding these together here in a minute, these are the opposite polarity of these, so they attach like that is what you want. What you don't want is for them to be like that. So flip it upside down until you get it aligned the way that it needs to be, and again you need 30 of those. You'll also need 12 of these for the first layer. You'll actually eventually need 48 of these. These serve as the spokes between layers. The way that you make them is you start off with a chain of magnets and you make a small pentagonal bipyramid, just a little one with an edge length of 3. The way that you do that is you start off by making a pentagon and you go all the way around like that. Put a single magnet in the center there. Make another pentagon, and that attaches in on the side and folds down on top, so you get this. Then you just remove the magnets on the corners here. So you end up with one of these. And again, 12 of those for each layer, or between each layer. Since there's 5 layers, there's 4 layers of spokes. So in total, you'll need 48 of them. I have more behind the camera back here. So to get into building this, what you'll want to do is assemble these into 4 kind of sub-assemblies. So to start off with, what you want to do is take each of these here, and this will attach to where it goes together. It's kind of hard to show because they're so small, sorry. Just like that. So there are 2 types of subassemblies, and you want to do 2 of each of them. One of them will involve 5 of these going around in a ring, and the other will be 5 in a band. Here, I'll show you one of each. The 5 in a ring is the one I'm going to build first. And just like that, you have 5 of them in a ring with these little square pieces going in between each one. You should also add 5 square pieces to each of these little nooks here. So that's 5 more all the way around. So you end up with this. You need 2 of these. I'm going to go ahead and build the other one. And that's 2 of them. Now you want to build the other ones that I talked about, which involve 5 of these in a band. The way that works is that they start out the same, in that these small square units go in between. If I could, sometimes they're a little bit difficult to attach here, as you can see. There, that time it went. So they go in between, like I was doing before, except instead of continuing around to add one here, like we were doing before, we're going to add it there. And now we can do one here. And see, you can have one with one of the legs going up, one with one of the legs going down, and then up again, and do that till you have 5 of these. And this is the second subunit that you need. You need 2 of these again, so I'm going to go ahead and make the second one. And there's the second one done. Now, to assemble this whole thing together, you take each of these 2 bands here and you attach them together to make a whole ring. So on one side it goes like that, and then on the other side it goes like that. And then each of these goes down here and there, so be careful because these do like to stick to the extra sides, so be careful when you're adding them. Just like that. And do the other one. And there you go. That is the first layer, well, most of it, of the layered Pentakis dodecahedron that we're doing. Now, one nice thing about layered shapes is that if you don't have enough magnets to build the whole thing, which is likely in this case because the finished construction is 12,700 something magnets, you can build, however many layers that you have enough magnets for. So I'll just say that this layer by itself, if you take pentagon rings and add them down to here, like that, so that the whole shape would have those on them, that is 1,020 magnets. I don't have the numbers calculated out for what it would be with 2 layers or 3 layers or 4 layers, but I'll put that in the description so that you can see. But for now, we're not going to be adding these. We're going to be adding these. So these go down the same way to where they fit. You want to make sure that these ones of the pentagon here are going to complete these triangles of 9 balls that you see. Like that. Go ahead and cover all 12 vertices with these. Now that the first layer is done, I'm going to go grab the subunits for the second layer. For layer 2, we're going to need 20 of these subunits here. For those of you who've watched my video for how to build just a regular Pentakis dodecahedron, these are similar to those subunits, and these are the types that we'll be using from here on out. For these ones, you start with 2 layers of rings of 30. These are pinched into a 3-sided shape like this. Adjust them until the legs are even, and kind of pinch in the middle until it looks like this. You also need 6 rings of 6. These are cut up into double stacks, and these are the opposite polarity of those there. So each one gets the single magnet here removed off the point, and then it will attach just like that. Do that to the other 2. And now you're at this point here. Now you may notice these are too long. The reason that they're too long in this case is that If you try to make them the length that they should be, which is instead of having a length of 3 magnets here, it would have a length of 2 magnets. Something happens with the polarity to where they don't want to attach together quite right. I'm not actually entirely sure what's going on, but it doesn't work. So if you start with 6 and then you take a chain and reduce it down to where you need it to be, then that seems to work. Now I said that, but even now I'm still leaving them a little long. Ultimately, you would want to remove 2 more magnets off of each end, but it's easier to have them be this length than when one of these is going to be sitting on the shape and you go to attach the next one, you remove a single magnet from here, and then you remove 3 magnets from the other one, and then they'll just click together. So I'm going to start with assembly now, and you'll see what I mean if you didn't quite get that. So each of these will go to where these 3 long legs straddle across 3 of these. Like that. Now when it comes to attaching 2 of these together, as I said, remove 1 magnet. Usually it'll be from the one that's already on the shape. It seems to be easier that way. Remove 3 magnets from this one here. Do be careful because these are very short edges. They like to disassemble on their own. But like that. And then this will go like this. You may have to fiddle a little bit with this edge to get it to connect properly, but they'll go together like that. Go ahead and attach on these other 2, and then there'll be 6 more, and you will have done half the shape. Okay, so at this point you are half done with this second layer. Now, when you're getting ready to flip it over onto this side as the base, you'll notice that this is not perfectly flat. There's a little bit of convexity to it. So before you flip it, go ahead and add 3 of these spoke pieces at these completed corners, and those will serve as just little legs to hold it up. Now go ahead and flip it over and do the other half. Okay, and that's all the pieces for the second layer. Go ahead and add on the rest of those spoke pieces, which I have here off screen, and then you'll be ready for the third layer. Okay, I'm going to go get all the subunits for layer 3. Layer 3 is going to use subunits very similar to what was in layer 2. They're just a little bit larger. So for these ones, you want to use 2 stacked rings of 42, just like before, pinched into thirds, and just adjusted so that they're even. And 6 stacked rings of 6, just like before, except this time you don't need to shorten them once they're attached. 6 is the length that they actually need to be. And just like before, you need 20 of these. Now, on the previous layer, I had magnets removed from one one magnet removed from the one that was sitting there and then 3 removed from the edge of the other one. But because these are already the right length, I don't need to do that. What we can do is just remove one magnet from one and add it to the other one before they attach together. So the first one will attach just like before, right here. And then for the next one to add down, remove this magnet here and add it here. And then when this one adds on here, it just clicks together like that. So go ahead and do the top half and then we'll get ready to flip it over. Okay, at this point it's halfway done. Now you just want to add 3 more of these subunits here onto the 3 completed corners, flip it over and do the other half. Okay, now that the third layer is on, you want to finish up with the rest of these subunits, and then I'm going to go grab the subunits for the fourth layer. Layer 4 is done in much the same way as layer 3. We start off with larger rings again. These are rings of 54. They're pinched into thirds, just like before. And this time, instead of rings of 6, we are using rings of 8. Okay, go ahead and start adding these on just like you did before. At this point, halfway through attaching the fourth layer, we run into another small hiccup. These spoke subunits, which we've been using to attach each layer to the one interior to it, at this point the weight is too much for these to support the shape anymore. We need something a little bit stronger. So we're going to use these. These are just the intermediate step of creating these. Just don't remove those corner pieces, which I showed earlier. Otherwise, they're the same. The extra corner pieces add some extra strength so that these can serve as supports to hold up the fourth layer when we flip it. Okay, now that we're almost done with layer 4, we just have the very last piece to put on top. We need to do something special here. This is only necessary to do if you're planning on building all 5 layers, which I obviously am, so I'm going to add these. What these are just rings of 10 magnets. You cut these up into 3 single rings, and these add on this part, and this part here. They add so that there's this spoke here, and it's a little bit difficult to see, but if, let's say this is that, this will attach not like that, but like that. And it'll attach there, and this ring will sit down on top like that, and it'll be the same on these other 2, sorry. And now go ahead and just attach this last one normally. What these are doing, before I move on, is that these are just a little extra support which enables the bottom of the shape to take a little bit of weight and offload some of the weight from the corners, because they start to crumble inwards as the shape gets larger. Okay, now that the last piece is on, go ahead and add the rest of these spoke subunits to the other 9 corners that don't already have those supports on them, and then I will go get the subunits for the last layer. The subunits for layer 5 are, again, very similar to what we've been using before, just larger. For these we're using rings of 66, and then for the short arms we're using rings of 10. Otherwise they are assembled exactly the same way. Now, before attaching the first one of these, you need to repeat the same step that you did before with adding extra rings here. This time, because these edges are a little bit longer, we'll be using rings of 14 rather than 10, which is what we used before. And now at this point you can add the first one of these on. Be a little careful because these do like to stick. You may need to do a little adjusting like I just had to with this arm here. From here, go ahead and complete the top half. Okay, now that you have all of the subunits attached for the top half of the last layer, we need to make some supports on these corners that will hold up the weight of the shape. The ones that we use down here are now too small. This middle part sticks up a little too far. So create some pentagonal bipyramids that are one longer. These are made, here I kind of pre-made all 3 of them. Let me take one of them apart. I'll show you how to make them. They're made the same way as with the other ones. You start by making a pentagon, adding a single magnet in there, and taking a small ring and adding it like that. And then you make a slightly larger one, like that. Here. And fold it in, and that's how you end up with these. Again, you need 3 of them. In order to make them look a little more unobtrusive, one thing that I have done is to remove the corners off of 3 of them, and then once it's attached, add 1 single magnet right here to give it a little bit more surface area to support. Do the same thing for the other 2. Okay, and now we're just about ready to flip it over. Unfortunately, while the smaller pyramids that we use down here for supports were too small, these are a little bit too large. So I'm solving that problem for now just by, when I flip this over, I'm going to use a quarter, and if this were upside down, the quarter would be sitting right there like that to just provide a little bit of extra height from a flat table to help support the weight here. And you can go ahead and add on the rest of the pieces. I have them off screen because they couldn't quite fit before. Lastly, before we get started in adding these on, go ahead and remove these here. If you can remove the magnets just from the corners, that's also something that you can do, but I find that's a little hit and miss, and it's best to just take these off and then remove the magnets off the corners and then put them back down. And once you've done that, you can go ahead and complete the shape. And that's all of the main subunits. To finish the shape, you just need 9 rings of 5, and 1 ring will go on each of these exposed corners here. And there you go. That is how you build the Quintuple Pentakis Dodecahedron, and it broke. Fortunately, I managed to get pictures and a video for the quick video for the beginning of this tutorial the first time I actually built this shape rather than now, or else I would have to do it all over, seeing as the bottom just crumbled out underneath it. Let me see if I can't show you what just happened. The bottom just did that. So yeah, for those hoping I might try for 6 layers with this one, unfortunately it can barely stand up at 5. So these layers are very close together, and because there's so many more edges compared to the Quintuple Icosahedron, the magnet count is much higher. This actually sets a new personal record for most magnets used in a single shape. This is 12,795? Yeah, 95. So there it is. I guess it's already partially smashed, but here I'm going to go ahead and do it the rest of the way.